كل مفهوم الصهيونية هو تمرد كامل على الله، وهو تحول من الخضوع لله إلى القومية. نتذكر كيف كان الشعب الفلسطيني والأراضي العربية والمسلمون كما قلت على مدى مئات السنين، عندما كنا نعاني في أوروبا من معاداة السامية، معاداة السامية الحقيقية وليس معاداة السامية الصهيونية. ومنذ ذلك الحين في الثلاثينيات من القرن الماضي أصبح أولئك الذين كانوا ينتقدون الصهيونية بشدة يشار إليهم باسم حماة المدينة.
طيب الحاخام دوفيد، يعني هذه مقولة أرض الميعاد وإسرائيل الكبرى من الفرات إلى النيل وعلم إسرائيل بالخطين الأزرقين يشير إلى ذلك، يعني غير موجودة إذن في الديانة اليهودية الأصلية والأصيلة؟
هذه شوارع القدس وفلسطين، كما ترى المظاهرات والأطفال يرفعون الأعلام الفلسطينية على الجدران هناك، لذا فهم يعيشون في فلسطين في القدس. على العكس من ذلك، المسلمون هم الذين يحتضنون اليهود. ألقى الصهاينة الحمض على وجهه وأصابوه بالعمى في إحدى عينيه، ولولا كوفيتي لظن الناس أنني صهيوني.
في لجة الروايات والنصوص الدينية التي سيسها المشروع الصهيوني خدمة لأهدافه، تبرز جماعة يهودية هي على النقيض تماما. صحيح أن أفرادها يرتدون زي الحاخامات ويعيش أغلبهم ما بين القدس ونيويورك ولندن، لكنهم معارضون لإنشاء إسرائيل. هي ليست معارضة وفقا لبرنامج سياسي أو طمعا في السلطة، لكنها معارضة من منطلق إيمان ديني وعقيدي. فهذه الجماعة تؤمن بأن إنشاء إسرائيل خروج على تعاليم التوراة، تمرد على مشيئة الله، أي عصيان للرب. إنها ناطوري كارتا أو حراس المدينة، الجماعة التي منذ تأسيسها عام 1935 ردا على المشروع الصهيوني تناضل إلى جانب الحق الفلسطيني وتحتج على قيام دولة باسم الوطن القومي لليهود. لم يسلم زعماؤها ولا أفرادها من اضطهاد الحكومات الإسرائيلية المتعاقبة لهم، بل وصل الأمر إلى حد الأذى الجسدي لهم من قبل الشرطة الإسرائيلية والاعتقالات والتضييق عليهم. وفي نيويورك ليسوا أفضل حالا، إذ يحاول الإعلام الغربي إسكات صوتهم. لمعرفة المزيد عن ناطوري كارتا ندخل عالمها المفتوح أصلا ونفهم النشأة والمسيرة وصولا إلى هذه اللحظة. أهلا بكم في 50 دقيقة. إذا كانت فكرة إسرائيل قائمة على تجميع اليهود فيما تعده وطنا قوميا لهم، فكيف لجماعة يهودية تضم عشرات آلاف الأشخاص أن تعارض ذلك؟ ليس سياسيا، إنما بعقيدة دينية. وكيف التقى زي الحاخام بالعلم الفلسطيني والكوفية الفلسطينية؟ يسعدني أن يكون ضيف اليوم من نيويورك الحاخام دوفيد وايس، وهو أحد الناطقين بلسان ناطوري كارتا. أهلا بك حاخام دوفيد في 50 دقيقة. ناطوري كارتا تأسست يعني في عام 1935. قبل ذلك ماذا كانت؟ إذا كان الفكر نفسه والعقيدة نفسها.
So first, with the help of the Almighty, I'm very grateful to be on your program, because it is our goal to be able to clarify to the world the terrible, terrible misnomer, which is part of the Nakba, the fact that people confuse Zionism with Judaism, and that is a tragedy. So it is really critical that I should have the opportunity to clarify this, that it's totally the opposite, and it's unjustifiable, unacceptable, the occupation. And Judaism, on the contrary, was a religion that was practiced by the Jewish people together, living together door by door, side by side, as the most friendly neighbors for literally hundreds of years. And so I thank you very much for having me on the program, and I pray to the Almighty that He should bestow upon me His truth, His wisdom, that I be worthy of conveying His message and so sanctify His name. Now, what was there? Jews and Muslims lived together in all the Arab and Muslim countries for hundreds and hundreds of years, and over thousands of years in many of the Arab and Yemen and Iran and so on, and in Palestine. So there was never a conflict, or there was never a rift because of the difference of religion. Although they were very religious Jews and very religious Muslims, it was never an impediment, a problem of coexistence. So what was in Jerusalem and Al-Quds, what was in the Arab world, what was in the Muslim world, Jews and Muslims living together. And the Jewish people are extremely thankful for the Muslim world for embracing the Jewish people. When we went through through such a long history in Europe, there was the Inquisition, there was crusades, there was so many different harassment through the history of the Jewish people, non-Christian people, and the Muslim countries and Arab countries embraced the Jews and took us in. And that included in the Ottoman Empire, in Palestine, in Palestine. We lived there, we flourished, we put out our greatest rabbis, our greatest leaders. That's what was happening till Neturei Karta came. When Zionism came, Zionism started like 140 years ago or so, and they decided they wanted to create their state, their sovereignty, and they decided to pick Palestine. We'll get into that. So when they came, automatically the Jewish community that was living in Palestine, that was living in Al-Quds in Jerusalem, they opposed this. It was the most religious community, the most saintly and God-fearing community in Jerusalem, in Palestine, because the ones who lived in the Holy Land, we call it the Holy Land, they were the ones who, like rabbis who retired from around the world, and they would go up to live in the Holy Land as individuals. It was never a mass movement to go there, because it's forbidden for the Jewish people to return to the Holy Land as a mass movement. And again, we'll get into that later. But just to answer your question, so the ones who were living in the Holy Land was a relatively smaller Jewish community from around the world. That was the Ivy League of Judaism. They were extremely God-fearing, and therefore they were extremely opposed to this nationalism called Zionism. When the Zionists decided to come to the Holy Land and create their nationalist state, the whole community was entirely opposed to them. And they called them interlopers, they called them heretics, rebels against God, and they opposed them. So Neturei Karta, that was created in the 1930s, Lemisparam, was only the name given to the ones who were very vocal against Zionism. But the opposition was from the whole community that was living there up to that time. The name was given in the 1930s to the people who were very vocal. They started referring to them as Neturei Karta. It's an Aramaic word from the Talmud that means protectors, Neturei, protectors, Karta, of the city, because it came out of the Talmud, where Rabbi told his students when they're going to visit another city, he said, please tell me who the Neturei Karta is of that city. When they came back, they said, oh, there's so many policemen and army, whatever. So the rabbi said, no, you misunderstood. Those are Machrivei Karta, destroyers of the city. The Neturei Karta, the protectors, are the ones who are the sages, the scholars, the holy men. So they put these on the walls. It was a common practice in order to be able to spread the news and so forth and give teachings. They would paste on the walls these big placards. So they put this verse of the statement of the Talmud that, the Neturei Karta are the sages and the ones of the army and so forth, the Machrivei Karta, because they were putting up their opposition to Zionism. So since then, in the 1930s, the ones who were very vocal against Zionism were referred to as Neturei Karta. But it's simply a loose name for the very religious who are opposing Zionism.
إذا كانت إسرائيل يعني قائمة على فكرة تجميع اليهود، وطن قومي لليهود، إذن لماذا ترفضها ناتوري كارتا؟ يعني حتى يفهم المشاهد العربي، لأنه تقولون إن إنشاء إسرائيل هو عصيان لله.
Yes, so with the help of the Almighty, Judaism is a religion of over 3,000 years, where the Jewish people, when the Almighty took the Jews out of Egypt, He gathered us in Sinai, and by Mount Sinai, the Jews made a covenant with God to be subservient to God, to keep the Holy Torah. And that is everything and all and only, that is what Judaism is. The covenant that we made, the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that is that we made a covenant to be subservient to God and uphold the laws of the Torah. As I explained, like the Sabbath is one of the 10 commandments. There's 613 commandments. That is what we are. And we are expressly told in the Torah by God that we are not to stray even one iota, even any bit from the Torah. We strictly follow the laws exactly as it was given on Mount Sinai, because it's given by the Almighty. Zionism is a movement, a political movement that started around 140 years ago by people who are estranged from God, who are already not religious as a whole. I always show the picture of Ben Gurion, the first prime minister, and on top of that, on the wall, you see the picture of Theodor Herzl. Here you see the Stars of David on the wall. This is the momentous, the historical occasion where David Ben Gurion is reading the Declaration of Independence in 1948 in Independence Hall. Now, this is the most historical moment. They're reading the Declaration of Independence in 1948 when it was ratified by the United Nations. And you can see that they're not even covering their heads. Imagine if you would make a Muslim state, it would be a historical time. You would have imams, sheikhs, ayatollahs, however you refer to them. They would be mullahs, whatever you would refer, you would have them sitting because it's a Muslim state. A Muslim means it's a religious, the Islamic religion. Here they're calling it a Jewish state, referring to God, that the Almighty is giving them the right to take the land. It was our land, and they're sitting there at this dais, almost entirely, not even that covering the head, which is a requirement. A Jew is required constantly to cover his head. In fact, when we go home, we don't wear a hat in the home whenever it is, so we have to wear a yarmulke. That means yorei malka, to fear the king. We always cover our head to show that we believe there's a God above us. And here they have the audacity, the chutzpah, the hubris. They're sitting there that the world should see, and they're not even covering their heads. They're spitting, so to say, God forbid, at the Almighty. And so you can see the duplicity, the contradiction, the hypocrisy of they're using the Star of David. David made the Psalms. He was King David. He carried the Torah with him. He made his whole thing was humbleness to God. And here they're making a state that they're claiming it's a Jewish state. They use the state of Israel. Israel is Jacob. And they're sitting there rebelling against God at that moment. And this is just one of many examples. They made their language Ivrit, modern Hebrew. The Torah is written in Lashon Kodesh. All the books here are Lashon Kodesh, the holy language which God we believe created the world and the Torah is written. We have hundreds of thousands of books and everything, and we use this holy language, we use it to pray and so on. And here they decided they're making a Jewish state and they make a new language, modern Hebrew. Why? Because they detest God. So in its essence, the whole state of Israel is a transformation from godliness, from subservience to God, into a base removing God from the equation. They want a nationalism, a base, materialistic concept of a piece of land, absolutely not under the auspices, under the rule of the Almighty. They declare proudly they're a democracy, which of course they're not a democracy. Only certain people have full rights, but that's what they say. They're a democracy, and you can do what you want. You don't have to keep God's laws. You can do what you want. So you see the hypocrisy and the falsehood. Here they claim it's by God given to them, and God made with us a covenant. We are required to keep the Torah. And here they're making a state where they flaunt their anti-God. They don't cover their heads. They change the language. Every concept of Zionism is a total rebellion against God, and it's a transformation from subservience to God into nationalism. Not only that, but the root of Zionism is stating they scorn the religious Jew. They say, you're looking to God for protection? Where was God by the Inquisition? Where was God by the Holocaust? So they spew blasphemy, heresy, ridiculing the power of the Almighty, and they say that our solution is to have a gun, to stand and make our own insurance policy, our own protection. They call it their insurance policy of Judaism, to have a state. So the essence of Zionism is based on heresy, saying that God can't protect us. That's the essence of Zionism. But beside that, the law of the Torah is, God foresaw this. So King Solomon, who built the temple as was required by God, over 2,000 years ago, he wrote the greatest prophecy called Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs. He wrote a prophecy. He said there will come a time when the Jewish people will be exiled. And when that will happen, God warns the Jews. God foresaw this will come about. And he says, when I'm putting you in exile, it is because you're not on that high level required to be in the Holy Land as a nation. Therefore, it's like a bitter medicine. So do not rebel against me. Do not attempt to, three things. Don't attempt to return en masse in large numbers. Jewish people are forbidden to return in large numbers to the Holy Land. Secondly, do not rebel against any nation. We have to be loyal in every country we reside. If I'm in the United States, I have to be a loyal United States citizen. If I'm in the Arab Emirates, I have to be a loyal citizen there. 3, do not make any attempt to return to end the exile. So there's 3 oaths that God put us in this book called Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs of King Solomon. So every concept of Zionism, whether it's the concept of making a state because they don't feel God can protect us, or the actuality in its fruition, when they actually came about and made their state, they are rebelling on every aspect against God, because we're not allowed to return en masse, not allowed to rebel against the nations. And certainly, by the way, we're not allowed to do this by killing and stealing. The Torah is based on that of the Torah. The laws are of the Torah that you have to emulate God. And it says in the Torah, thou shalt not steal. You're not allowed to steal. You're not allowed to kill. So in order for them, the Zionists, to make their state, they did it because they had a technicality. They had a problem because the Palestinians were living there. So in order to make their state, they had to do it by removing, by oppressing, by the Nakba, by destroying the communities that were there. So that is the basics against the basics of Judaism, not to steal, not to kill. And I'll just add one more thing, that on top of all of that, we remember how the Palestinian people in Arab lands and the Muslims, as I said, through the hundreds of years when we were suffering in Europe from anti-Semitism, true anti-Semitism, not what the Zionists say anti-Semitism. It was the Muslim and Arab countries who gave us the home. We flourished together. We lived together. So we have to show, it's required by the Jewish law to show gratitude. It's a requirement to show gratitude. So even any people we're forbidden to steal from. And we'd be forbidden to make a Jewish state even in a desolate, uninhabited land. It would be forbidden for us to leave exile and make a state. And we're forbidden to steal from anybody. So they combine the stealing, killing, and doing it against the laws of the Torah. And they're doing it to whom? To people who gave us a safe haven, a home that we're really required to pay back with good, with kindness, thankfulness, gratitude. Instead of paying back gratitude, they're accusing the Muslim countries and certainly the Palestinians of being evil, of being villains. So it's a Nakba beyond words. As Jews, we cry, we are humiliated, we are beyond words of the embarrassment and the hurt when we're witnessing what the Zionists are doing in the name of a holy religion of Judaism. And from day one, I could just say, the rabbis stood in opposition. Here you have a picture of Rabbi Sonnenfeld meeting with the king of Transjordan in 1920s, stating that the Jewish community is in absolute opposition to what the Zionists are doing. And here you have in 1947, this is a document of when the chief rabbi at the time of the Jewish community, nothing with the Zionist rabbinate, which is just window dressing, a farce. It's window dressing for the state. They made a rabbinate. But the true rabbinate of the Jewish community in Palestine was Rabbi Dushinsky of blessed memory, Rabbi Yosef Tzvi Dushinsky. And in 1947, it's the United Nations documents, Declaration before the United Nations, July 16, 1947, a year before the United Nations ratified it, the United Nations sent a delegation to the Holy Land to see what they should do about this problem that the Zionists want a state and the Palestinian people are opposed. So they came along and he stated, he met with them and he said, we furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. He said, we oppose the creation of a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. He was the voice of the Jewish community. And after he passed on, you can see, as we constantly have tens and hundreds of thousands of Jews gathering in the streets of Jerusalem, it is bogus, it is not Judaism. And let me just add, we get arrested, the boys and girls, because they refuse to serve in the Israeli army. It's mandatory military service. And they get brutally beaten. Nobody reports this. Children, old rabbis, they get brutally beaten daily for 77 years because we are in total opposition to the existence of this rebellion against God, this occupation called the Zionist State of Israel. And this is ongoing, and the media does not report on this. If this would happen, God forbid, in the United States, and this is happening daily, they spray them on the demonstrations with chemicals that destroy their clothes, that's called stink water, that makes them sick. And this is daily happening, and it's a scandal, and it's being done under the auspices of so-called the Jewish state. So we have to understand the hypocrisy and the falsehood that this is not a Jewish state, it's it's a Zionist state.
هناك حاخامات في إسرائيل. هذه الحاخامات تفتي بما يوافق أهواء الحكومة الإسرائيلية. وأنت حاخام، يعني كلامك مغاير تماما لما يقوله هؤلاء الحاخامات. الحاخامات في إسرائيل الذين يفتون لصالح الحكومات الإسرائيلية، إذن على أي نصوص توراتية يعتمدون؟
Yes. The question is very, very critical, and I'm happy that you asked this question. This is clear that Since the destruction of the temples 2,000 years ago, Jews are expressly forbidden to have our own sovereignty. Again, even in a desolate land, uninhabited, and we always opposed it. And like I said, we were not allowed to steal or kill. There's no justification for the state. In fact, we put out a book called The Rabbis Speak Out, which is a compilation of, this was over 10 years ago, 130 years of religious Jewish opposition to Zionism. This is the voice we compiled the leading rabbis. We're not talking about the tens of thousands of rabbis around the world, that invariably, the more the religious the community, whether it is in Mea She'arim, in Jerusalem, in Al-Quds, or you come to New York, the second largest Jewish community, right across from Manhattan, Williamsburg, it is the largest concentration of religious Jews. You won't find one single Israeli flag. You will go to Stanford Hills in England, the most religious Jewish community. You won't find Israeli flags. And that's why the rabbis, I have compiled the leaders of the generation. Here you have, let's say in Europe, we have from every country, from Russia, from Romania, from Hungary, from Poland, all before the Second World War, all the leading voices of religion. Rabbi Yisroel Meir HaKohen, Rabbi Yisroel Meir HaKohen, called the Chafetz Chaim. Everybody follows in the religious community his law books called Mishnah Brura. It's right in the bookshelves behind me. Now, you ask the question, where do you always hear in the settlements, you hear Smutrich, Ben Gvir, they wear a kappel, they wear a yarmulke, and they call themselves religious, and they have the rabbinate and the rabbis. So where did they come along? So they come along, and when Zionism started, in order to gain legitimacy, because the movement Zionism was purely nationalist, they detested God, Ben Gurion, Theodor Herzl, and so forth. They all detested God and the religion. But in order to be able to gain support from the world, and they don't have any godly morals because they're not religious. So they don't care if they'll falsify with anything. So they don't care to perpetrate a fraud, a crime. So they have no morals. So therefore, they decided to incorporate the religion to tell the world that, it was given to us by God. Everybody knows the comment that they say they don't believe in God, but God gave us the land. So this is what they do. All they wanted is they should be able to say proudly, we are a first-rate country, but have nothing with God. But in order to gain the support, you need massive support. You need a really massive support to create a state. So they decided to incorporate religion. So what did they do? So they took the words of God, that God gave us the land 3,000 years ago, and they ignore totally the oaths of King Solomon. They ignore everything that we're in exile. And we always look at, say that they're evil and that they're rebels against God. But the Zionists were able to find people who will buy into their ideology. They say, because we suffered so much, therefore it nullifies the exile. It's what we call lawyer talk, and it's just simply an excuse.
طيب الحاخام دوفيد، يعني هذه مقولة أرض الميعاد وإسرائيل الكبرى من الفرات إلى النيل وعلم إسرائيل بالخطين الأزرقين يشير إلى ذلك، يعني غير موجودة إذن في الديانة اليهودية الأصلية والأصيلة؟
With the help of the Almighty, everything the Zionists state, they say, is a lie. Don't believe a word of what they say. Like I said, we're in exile. The Muslim countries embraced the Jews, took us in, even though the scholars knew what our belief is. They didn't feel the Jews are any threats. So they took in the Jewish people. Why? Because they know we are forbidden to attempt to end exile. Yes, there was the Holy Land, whatever the borders are, it's no difference what the borders are or were, because we are forbidden to even have 1 inch, 1 centimeter of establishing a Jewish state. We are simply required to serve God, keep the Torah, and we are never a threat to the Muslim people. What the borders, the exact borders are, it's no difference. But the Zionists, what their aspiration, what they want, we're not in their minds, but what they want, a greater Israel, who knows exactly where they want to go from? Does the blue lines mean they want to go from one end to the other? Maybe that's what they mean, or maybe they're just mimicking, following like the talus. The Jewish people, when they pray, they wear a garb that has on it lines. So maybe they were just trying to replicate the talus that a Jewish male wears when he prays. I'm not sure, we don't know what they want, but whatever they want, even 1 centimeter of a state of Israel is never acceptable according to Judaism. And that their referral to the Torah is revolting and repulsive and unacceptable and false.
طب الحاخام دوفيد، في نقطة أريد أن أفهمها. تقول أن الله كتب على اليهود يعني هذا الشتات بسبب الخطايا والذنوب. طيب لنفترض مثلا وفقا لهذا الرأي أو هذا الإيمان اليهود تابوا، هل يعني أن أرض فلسطين تصبح ملكا لهم في حال التوبة أم ماذا؟
Never will there be a state of Israel, a so-called state of Israel. That will never be acceptable. What we do believe is that, like it says in Jeremiah, Ezekiel, the prophets, Isaiah, that God warned us that we're not on that very high level of spirituality when we were living there over 2,000 years ago, and therefore we will be sent into exile. And then God said, so we were dispersed because of our sins, and it's like a medicine. Like a medicine is bitter. So we are dispersed amongst the nations where we're to serve God and be a light unto the nations, how to serve God. And then one day, we believe God with his compassion will reveal his glory, because the reason a person lives on this world is to glorify God. That's what we believe. Our whole purpose is to serve God, do kindness, keep the Torah, and the world is here to serve God.
طيب هناك من ناطور كارتا من يعيش في مدينة القدس الآن. هؤلاء الذين يعيشون في القدس كيف ينظرون إلى هذه المدينة؟ هذه مدينة من؟ وفي الوقت ذاته يعني هل يتقاضون رواتب من الحكومة الإسرائيلية؟ هل يدفعون مثلا ضرائب؟ وإذا دفعوا ضرائب يعني بأنهم يسهمون في اقتصاد إسرائيل. إذا كان لك أيضا تعطيني صورة عن كيف يعيش هؤلاء في القدس.
Oh yes, it's very important. The chief rabbi of our community, the chief rabbi of Palestine, Rabbi Teitelbaum, Rabbi Joel Teitelbaum, in the 1960s, I believe, he moved from, maybe 1950s already, he moved to New York, and he remained with the title Chief Rabbi of Palestine. And he held court. He was the rabbi for 30 years or more, and he gave his edicts, his rulings from New York, from Williamsburg he lived, and then later in upstate New York. And he kept on, and he had hundreds of thousands of followers, and he urged his followers, he says, exactly what you're saying. He said, being there, you're somehow supporting the state, try to leave. And many followed. Tens of thousands of Jews left because they didn't want to be supporting the state of Israel, and they didn't want to get any benefits from the state of Israel. But not everybody could leave. So you have tens of thousands of people living there, hundreds of thousands who were anti-Zionist, and also there were other rabbis who said, look, we have to stand and fight from within. So we have to make demonstrations. We shouldn't forsake the land. So they had a different opinion from Rabbi Teitelbaum. So they stayed and they fought from within. You can see the demonstrations in the streets of Jerusalem. Stop Zionist terrorist massacre in Gaza. These are the streets of Jerusalem. In Palestine, you see the demonstrations. The children, they're putting up Palestinian flags on the walls over there. So they're living in Palestine, in Jerusalem, but they are totally separate. They don't recognize, they say, Eini Makir, we don't recognize your authority, the state of Israel. So how do they live? They live because they do their private business, and then they also have the Rabbi Teitelbaum of blessed memory, the chief rabbi of Palestine. Yeah, let me just finish this. He established a fund called Keren Hatzolah, the charity fund to save, and that we give support for the institutes, for the individuals who don't take money from the state of Israel, and we send from around the world money that they should be able to exist. It's a special fund for the people who refuse to take any fund from Israel, and it's very hard for them, but they're living there and they're fighting from within daily against the Zionist occupation. They don't carry guns, they don't carry knives, but they're brutally beaten and arrested, but they're living there. Many would like to leave, but not everybody can. So it's very hard to get a citizenship in the United States, in Canada, and England. So many are still there, and they're fighting from within, but they're living there in total opposition to the Zionist state of Israel, as maybe even know. Here you have Rabbi Hirsch when they made the PLO. We have Rabbi Moshe Hirsch became the representative of the Jews in the Palestinian Authority. He lived in Jerusalem. The Zionists threw acid in his face, and they blinded him in one eye. He was barely able to see from the other. Afterwards, when they made the Gaza, we went and we brought medical aid there.
وأتذكر حينها عينه الراحل ياسر عرفات الحاخام مشاهر وزيرا للشؤون اليهودية عام 95. بس أنا ألاحظ أنه يعني غير أنه تتعرضوا لمضايقات، لتنكيل من قبل السلطات الإسرائيلية، حتى إيذاء جسدي من قبل أفراد الشرطة، أنتم في الغرب أيضا يحاربكم الإعلام الغربي، صحيح؟ يعني يحاول هذا الإعلام أن يسكت أصواتكم.
Not only me, I mean, my brothers and sisters, Jewish brothers and sisters in the Holy Land, I mean, who's talking? I mean, we cry about how much the Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank and in Lebanon and Syria, all over the people are suffering, who are being murdered, killed, assassinated, tortured, and suffering in throughout, especially in the refugee camps, the Palestinians. But beside that, the Jewish brothers and sisters of mine, they go out. There's almost not a teenage boy from the very religious community who wasn't arrested at least once or a few times. They get beaten, they get harassed, much worse than us. We around the world, we get death threats. We get harassed, yes. If the chief rabbi, Rabbi Teitelbaum, they tried to assassinate him. And so we go through, harassment, but thank God, Alhamdulillah, with God's help, we are protected. They attack us physically. My son was just this last night, at a demonstration where they attacked him. They grabbed his hat, his glasses. They punched him. And he ran away. And this is happening daily. And a lot of times the police aren't pretty lax when it comes to the Zionists. They don't seem to see when they're attacking us. But still in all, we thank them because at the end of the day, they're safe. If it wouldn't be for the police, they would murder us. So we are getting attacked, but we won't be silent. Rabbi Teitelbaum pleaded with his followers. He said, I plead with you. It is at the cost of our lives, go into the streets and tell the world that the Zionists and the Zionist state of Israel and the Zionists, that they're bogus, that they're not Jewish, they have no right to speak in the name of Judaism. It's Zionism, it's false, it's unacceptable. At the cost of our lives, we should go out to the streets, and we do that.
الآن حدثتني عن الانتهاكات اللي تتعرض لها من الحكومة الإسرائيلية لمن هم هناك أو من الشرطة في أمريكا أو الإعلام. هذا اللباس في نظر كثير من الناس في العالمين العربي والإسلامي لباس حاخام، يؤيد إسرائيل، يؤيد الصهيونية، يؤيد قتل وطرد الفلسطينيين. يعني لولا أنك تضع الكوفية الفلسطينية والعلم الفلسطيني لظنك كثير أنك من هؤلاء الحاخامات. فبالتالي الناس لمن لا يعرف من أنتم، هذا اللباس يعرضكم لمضايقات مثلا من عرب من العالم الإسلامي وهم لا يعرفون من أنتم ومن ناطوري كارتا.
It's very important that. Now, but what you're saying is exactly what we have to talk about. The Zionists accuse the world of being anti-Semitic. As Palestinians and Muslims are anti-Semitic, they hate the Jews. That's vulgar. On the contrary, the Muslims are the ones who embraced the Jews and were good to us. And the only opposition the Muslims have is not to the Jewish people. Their opposition is to Zionism and to occupation. And it's an insult to common sense to confuse the two. If you oppose somebody stealing your home, if you oppose people who are bombing and killing hundreds of thousands of people, murdering and maiming, that doesn't mean you're hating the Jews. It's disgusting to confuse the two. Not only that, the Zionists, being that they made their state, and since they exist, they have created a rift and a hate and a mistrust between Muslims and Jews. Because people think exactly what you say, that if I'm a rabbi, the more the religious a person is, they think the more they support the state of Israel. So because of Israel, because of that evil occupation, because of Zionism, Jewish people around the world are in danger. So the worst anti-Semites is the Zionist state of Israel. They are the anti-Semites. They are killing the Palestinians. They're killing Jews who oppose them, as I've showed you. And people are dying for their cause. So they are causing so much bloodshed of Muslims and Jews, and they are causing hate, that people hate the Jews because of their state. So they are the personification. The textbook definition of anti-Semitism is the Zionist state of Israel. How dare they accuse the ones who are opposed to the occupation of being anti-Semitic. They are the anti-Semites. They cause anti-Semitism. Exactly what you say, that people look at me, and if it wouldn't be for my kafiyah, if it wouldn't be for this, people would think that I'm a Zionist. How terrible, how tragic. That's part of the Nakba.
طيب، 15 من مايو من عام 48 إسرائيل تعتبر يوم الاستقلال. الفلسطيني يعتبر النكبة وما حل بهم للفلسطينيين. أنتم كيف تحيون هذا اليوم؟ كيف تعتبرونه؟
We consider it one of the greatest days of mourning. We gather in our synagogues, we fast, and we mourn the existence of the state. We are very careful that even if there's a happy occasion we celebrate the circumcision, and those days, so you make a celebration in the synagogue. Even if there's a celebration of a circumcision, we will say the prayers that you say on a day that's not a celebrity day. In other words, we're very careful to show that we are mourning on this day. It is the worst catastrophe for Jewish people. And the chief rabbi Teitelbaum used to say, this is holding back the revelation of God. This is the greatest catastrophe for the Jewish people. We cry and mourn with the people. We went to the refugee camps. I went to Baja Barajna. We went to Sabra Shaltila to cry and mourn. We went to Gaza to cry and mourn. We went to the orphanages. We went to the homes. And we say that we pray constantly for the total, God should help, speedy and peaceful, entire removal of this rebellion against God, the state of Israel. And we are hurting so much with the people of Gaza, the people of Palestine. We cannot express, we wish the people of Gaza and Palestine should hear our crying, our voice. There would be hundreds of thousands of Jews demonstrating if it wouldn't be for the vicious attacks that the Zionists attack the rabbis who do go out and our communities that do go out. When we go out, we get viciously attacked by the Zionists.
في مدينة نابلس السامريون اللي أيضا بيقولوا أنفسهم هم يعني من أصل بني إسرائيل. إسرائيل أيضا تعاملهم كما تعامل الفلسطيني. في ناطوري كارتا بماذا تختلفون عن السامريين في نابلس؟
Oh, well, you know, there are many people around the world who are anti-Zionist, very good, you know, and from different religions. We're not confusing, you know, the concept of being anti, you know, the vicious, the genocide, anti that, you know, with many people, we are just explaining the Jewish religion purely from the Torah that we accepted 3,000 years ago. And Judaism strictly abides by the laws of the Torah of Moses, of Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher Moshe Rabbeinu, and we accept the written law and the Torah Shebeksav, the Torah Shebal Peh, the whole Torah. And the ones in Nablus, they are a sect that went away from the acceptance of the oral law, of the Talmud, of the teaching of the Torah that says that we are required to follow the laws as was given from Moses to the sages on, from to Joshua to the Shoftim and the following the Talmud and the law books, the Shulchan Aruch, our law books. We were not allowed to change even one letter of this law, and we don't for 3,000 years. They went away from that, so we're totally estranged from them. You know, like I say, there's many people who are opposed to Zionism, but we're talking about Judaism, and Judaism is totally estranged from the Samaritans and other groups who will be opposed to Zionism.
في نقطة صراحة لا أريد أن يعني أتجنبها وإن كنا على وشك أن تنتهي الحلقة. في بداية الحرب على غزة وتحديدا قبل العملية البرية، نتنياهو استحضر قصة العماليق. وعندما تقرأ قصة العماليق، وأنت طبعا تعرفها أكيد يعني، فقط للمشاهدين يعني العرب، خطيرة في أذهان اليهود. عندما قال صموئيل لشاول أنه يعني اقتل كل رجل، كل امرأة، كل طفل، كل رضيع، كل بغل، كل حمار، كل جمل، يعني إبادة. العماليق في أذهان اليهود اللي في إسرائيل ماذا تمثل؟ لأنه هناك من يعتبر العماليق اللي هم الفلسطينيين في السابق هم الشر والخطر الذي يهدد اليهود في إسرائيل.
No, it isn't. And whenever they refer to the Torah, they are misconstruing, falsifying the words of the Torah. It's a discussion in and of itself, the laws of the Torah, you know, what was over there. So, but that's a long subject. But when he says Amalek, he's evil and taking words of the Torah that he knows that the world doesn't know the details of the Torah, and he's trying to use it for his use, like he uses the Star of David, like they use the name Israel. It's a falsification of the Torah. Who is Amalek? The rabbis teach us the spiritual things today. Amalek was a nation at that time who fought against the children of Israel when we left Egypt, and they tried to destroy, throughout history, a few times they tried to destroy the Jews. But that has absolutely nothing with this. Our rabbis say that there's such a concept of Amalek. If there is Amalek today, there is Amalek, it's that Netanyahu is an Amalek. He is an Amalek. He's uprooting from the Jews their closeness to God to make it into a basic nationalism. He's uprooting the Jewish connection to God that forbids us from killing and stealing. So if there's any Amalek, it's him. But it's disgusting to even listen to him. When he goes to the United Nations, he speaks. He goes to the White House. He goes to Congress. He always speaks about God and the Torah, when in his whole country is constantly desecrating the Torah. They dig up graves because they want to study the bodies, which is forbidden. They kill and maim Jews who we never carry guns. They make autopsies, do everything against God. The use of the word Amalek and the other ridiculous use of the Torah is totally bogus. Don't be moved by them at all. They're criminals, and every word they say out of their mouth is evil.
أخيراً انتهى الوقت بأقل من دقيقة. جواب في أقل من دقيقة. لو أقيمت دولة فلسطينية على حدود 4 من حزيران في الضفة الغربية وغزة وعاصمتها القدس، ستعترف بأن هذه دولة وقد تنتقل إلى العيش فيها؟
Oh, it would be the greatest privilege. And we plead with the people of Palestine. No, we are crying and hurting with you. We pray every day that God should be totally removed, just like apartheid should remove this state of Israel entirely. We can then embrace the people of Palestine, said this is your land, and we want to be, if you will allow us, of course, we would love to be citizens in your beautiful country under a free Palestine. Inshallah.
من نيويورك الحاخام دوفيد وايس أحد المتحدثين باسم ناطور كارتا والممثلين عنها. شكرا لوجودك معنا في 50 دقيقة.
Thank you. شكرا. السلام عليكم. Thank you.
وشكرا لكم مشاهدينا على متابعة هذه الحلقة من 50 دقيقة. تحياتي.